Welcome to The Good Company, a brainchild of Deloitte India's Risk Advisory. My name is Munjal Kamdar, and I have with me two of my eminent colleagues today, Rohit and Santosh. So, Rohit and Santosh, welcome to the event. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Munjal.
Risk is quite an interesting topic currently and a very relevant topic for most business heads. And most of them are grappling with how to deal with the changing facet of risk, right? What are some of your thoughts, Rohit, on how the facets of risk are evolving for businesses today?
Today, we are living in a very dynamic and evolving world. Businesses are becoming more complex, they are becoming more boundaryless, which is actually leading to a lot of introspection in the minds of regulators as well as corporates. As more and more technology drives business, regulators are trying to understand how to evolve policies and procedures or regulations which will really help businesses to perform in this complex environment within certain boundaries. Accordingly, when we look at corporates or organizations, what they are trying to understand is that as businesses transform, what is it that could impact them? So, what can go wrong is the question which is being asked from a risk perspective. And I think it's a catch up situation where there is a continuous discussion around what can go wrong and what is it that we need to proactively fix, right, which the businesses are grappling with. Interestingly, what's happened is that today risk is become a boardroom discussion. So it's getting much more importance than it used to at earlier points in time. And that's the reason where we see businesses also spending a lot of time, effort, and money to really understand what can go wrong and what is it that they need to do proactively to mitigate any business impact from a risk perspective. And let me add one more aspect to it, that technology is playing a very, very important role, both from a business transformation standpoint as well as from a risk mitigation standpoint.
So, that's a good view. Santosh, you specialize in regulatory and operational risk, right? So, from a regulatory perspective, what are the changes that you're seeing in the risk environment?
That's a very interesting question, Munjal. I think with the pace of innovation and the technological disruptions that we are seeing, that coupled with new business models evolving and convergence is really resulting in a lot of regulatory changes as well. And at most times, these regulatory changes are very dynamic. And those regulatory changes means that most part of the organization business gets impacted. So if you pick an organization, right from, let us say, sourcing, manufacturing, pricing, how you take the product to market, where you hire from, all that gets impacted because of regulation. And if you don't have a very agile process of staying ahead of the regulation or complying with the regulation, the companies could always land up in trouble. Okay. And compliance today cannot be a point-in-time compliance. It really has to be continuous and it has to be 360 degrees. And as Rohit mentioned, I think what is then important is that how technology gets leveraged in making sure that companies identify what the compliance needs are and become proactive in making sure that it gives them the competitive advantage that they're looking for in the marketplace.
Sure. So that's good. I mean, it's nice to hear about being agile as well as compliant and regulations in the same sentence. But I think that's the changing dynamics of the business environment, right?
So let me ask you a question, Munjal. Since your domain is cyber, how do you see security risk evolving in an environment which is dynamic? And there is a huge focus on technology.
Sure. I think both of you mentioned it at some point in time. One is that technology is playing a very predominant role in the manner in which business is executed, right, with corporations. Of course, over the last few years, it has become a more interconnected world with more dependence on partners, vendors, suppliers, and customers, right? And it has brought together its own nature of cyber security risks, right, that organizations have to deal with. So there are two things. What we've seen with large organizations and organizations that perform world-class business processes is that one is they're implementing best practices, right, within their operations, right, that takes care of day-to-day operational risks. Second is to what Santosh was mentioning, they also increasingly need to comply with various regulations that regulators are bringing in, depending on which industry you're operating in. So if you look at financial services, highly regulated, pharma industry is highly regulated. If you're dealing with the government, right, there's a lot of regulations you need to comply with. So I think it's a combination of implementing best practices along with the regulatory compliance that is unique to your region, your industry, that's driving organizations to adopt the best practices from the cybersecurity side, right? So that's how it's evolving. So thanks for that. Let's talk about the event that we have coming up now. We are hosting RiskCon in September. We are hosting RiskCon in September, and what I wanted to understand from you, Rohit, is how are we selecting the theme for RiskCon in the current year?
So, if I just turn back the clock and just talk about our first RiskCon, which happened in 2016, the theme was transforming risk in a boundaryless and digital world. Last year, which is 2018, the theme which we ran was more on transformation. Basically, businesses transforming themselves, leveraging risk, right? And interestingly, we had issued a survey, a risk survey, 2018, in our last RiskCon, and the three key risks which came out, and I would say futuristic risks which were coming out, were with respect to cyber, technology, and regulation, and that's what we actually talked about right now.
Sure.
This year, we thought of really looking at the future of risk.
Okay.
So the theme is being driven more with respect to future belongs to the prepared. Okay. Right? I think what we believe as risk professionals, that risk drives performance. Okay. And in today's environment, and as we talked about regulations, conversions, technology, etc., it's very important that organizations get an understanding and control proactively over risks which they are exposed to for their businesses, to really leapfrog and meet their aspirations from a growth perspective. So we are, in this RiskCon, we will be covering aspects about future of work, future of risk, future of compliance, future of technology, and future of audit. So we will, talk about these themes in the RiskCon 2019, and it'll be all about the future of risk.
It definitely looks like an event to look forward to. We also publish a marquee publication, right, with each RiskCon. So what is the publication we would be releasing this year?
So the theme of the publication is Future Belongs to the Prepared. Okay. And as I said, it'll be all about how we as experts in this area of risk, how do we see risk evolving in the coming times? Okay. Right. So we are trying to capture that on the basis of our understanding, how we see risks evolving across industries, across businesses. And especially across regulations, which most of the industries are exposed to. Okay.
So, Santosh, this year's RiskCon is in your home turf. It's in Bangalore, right? So, what is your take on the theme that we have this year for the RiskCon?
Yeah, so I think it's very aptly themed because Deloitte has a point of view on the future of issues, and clearly risk is something which is always out there. Okay. So you really have to be forward-looking, and you really have to understand all the emerging risks to be able to mitigate it well. So I think it is, as I said, aptly themed. Risk has to power performance, and unless you sort of have a 360-degree view, as I said, you will not be able to address it adequately. And because technology is so integral to how organizations run today, technology is going to be so integral to how risks are managed. I think it is just about right that we are doing it in the technology capital of the country. So we are fairly excited to host it in Bangalore for the first time. Sure. And looking forward to having all our marquee clients and stakeholders participate.
Great. I think one of the factors Rohit mentioned was the future of work. And I think one of the points in the future of work was a lot of work from home. Yeah. So I think most people from the risk advisory team are advocating work from home. I hope you're aware of that.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the expectations from each one of them is that they need to upgrade themselves as far as technology is concerned. Sure. Right. So the more they skill up, the more opportunities to work from home. Okay. I mean, I'm working on scaling up. So
And on a lighter note, probably the term "Thank God it's Friday" will be redundant, because if you're working from home, Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays will all look the same.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
So it depends on how you look at it.
Or maybe Sundays as well.
Yeah. So of course there'll be no difference between Sunday and Monday also. Yeah.
So now we come to my favorite part, right? I get to ask you a set of quick fire questions, right? So I'm going to put out some terms for you, right? And tell me what you feel about it, right? So give me the answer that comes to your mind immediately. I get to ask you a set of quick fire questions, right? So the first one is for you, Rohit. User experience personalization.
So, what I expect is that when the risk advisory professionals get up in the morning, they think about risk, and when they go onto their Facebook page, they come across Deloitte Risk Advisory.
Wow, yeah, that's a good one. Next one's for you, Santosh. 3D printing.
3D printing, to my mind, is really democratization of manufacturing.
Okay.
I guess everybody will have a 3D printer at home, and that's a reality. The way technology is moving and the way the prices are coming down. So one has to now look at probably products in risk advisory as well, which you can print and deliver.
Oh, absolutely. So basically, the idea is to make sure that people are self-sufficient and there is a home office if you're really going to work out of home.
But I hope the ink is cheaper than the normal printers. On 3D printers. The next one's for you, Rohit. India's lost to New Zealand in the World Cup.
I think they didn't manage the risk well. They also say from a risk perspective, you need to interpret and apply risk more effectively.
Santosh, for you, virtual reality.
Virtual reality, the only virtual reality that I used to hear of 5 years back was when my son used to look for Pokemons on the road. But I guess VR and AR, as we know, it is changing rapidly. It is not just going to be about auditory and visual. I think VR, AR will transcend and will cover all 5 senses. Okay. In some form, we see that at some movie halls today with 4D experiences. Okay. But it will become more immersive and more personalized going forward.
So the last one is for you, Rohit. Blockchain.
When the ledgers are locked, how do you manage identity access?
Okay. That's a good one. Okay. Thank you. That brings us to the end of The Good Company, and we look forward to RiskOn now.
Thank you, Munjal. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to our marquee event, RiskOn 2019, on the 27th of September at Shangri-La Hotel, Bangalore.
I will surely be there, and I look forward to meeting all of you. Thanks.
Thanks, Santosh and Rohit. So that brings us to the end of this episode of The Good Company, a brainchild of Deloitte India's Risk Advisory. Thank you, and look forward to meeting all of you at RiskOn.
Thank you.
Thanks, Munjal.